me see what's out there.
Would help if I added myself to the stream. There you go. Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There Plus, a weekly video stream and podcast that is currently focused on Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 3, which is available to watch on Disney Plus. My name is Keith Isles. I'm an independent filmmaker and lifelong enthusiast of film and television. And if you're new to watching this today, welcome. Sorry, I've not quite got my act together with hitting the add to stream button there, but I do get better as I go along. So welcome. If you enjoy this sort of thing, please do consider giving us a thumbs up, a like on that, because it does help the channel to get recognized, and also consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon to get notified as and when new content drops on this. This channel is primarily a channel devoted to the love of film and television. We not only cover series and movies, but we cover physical media, all sorts of different things. So if you're here and get to the end of this stream, then please check out some of the other work on the channel. We really appreciate that. So spoilers ahead. In this week's episode, we're going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around episode 4 of season 3 of The Mandalorian, which is actually chapter 20, The Foundling. But I never do this journey alone. I am really pleased to welcome my guest, who is also a big Star Wars fan, as well as a very talented artist and writer. Welcome to the show, Mytholo G, also known as Graham Williams.
Hey there.
Hey, Graham, how are you?
All well, thank you. Excited as ever to geek out and discuss The Mandalorian.
Indeed, indeed. I'm glad to see your the perfect crossover there of, or should I say crossroads there of Stormtroopers and the Beatles. I like it.
Absolutely. I'm just digging out all my Star Wars t-shirts for this podcast and podcast for you there, Keith.
There you go.
So yeah, just hitting them. For all those who can't see, yeah, we do have 4 Stormtroopers, very much as the Fab Four were in the 60s crossing Abbey Road.
Very cool indeed. Very cool. Maybe I should get a Star Wars waistcoat at some point.
That'd be awesome.
That might be an idea. I've got my Mando mug though.
Fantastic. No Grogu plushie this week. My daughter has hidden it from me, even though it made a cameo a couple of episodes ago. No, it's not going to make an appearance this week. So, for any fans out there expecting an appearance of Grogu plushie, not this week.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I think but before we get into this, you and I we kind of owe The Mandalorian, and particularly Ludwig Göransson some sort of kudos this week, because the theme to The Mandalorian was indeed the theme that helped us this time last week when we were actually up a mountain in Snowdonia, facing the elements, didn't it? Just
yeah, it spurred us on before we had a hell of a storm hit us, and a few times afterwards as well. It really calmed the nerves. It got a bit treacherous and grim coming back down the mountain in Wales, but we did it. Yes, and the music, my God, did you tonk your car speakers?
Exactly. Well, it felt like it's the theme, because it's got that quest and that sort of triumphant fanfare to it. It just felt like the perfect music for that. It made me think 20 years ago. I was in Costa Rica doing Mount Chiripo in Costa Rica. And at the time, it was Howard Shore's theme from the Lord of the Rings movies. That was the sort of score that accompanied us as we were doing that.
And a shot in this episode that mirrors the Fellowship as well. We can certainly
There you
Bring that
go.
along later on when we get stuck into this episode.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also one other thing, as I always mention on these, try not to do too much in terms of reading reviews or summaries of the episodes, etc., until you and I get to have this conversation. And there was one afterwards. I try and follow up with checking everything out. Yeah. And there was a really cool Easter egg actually in last week's episode that I completely missed, and I love it. I should have got a picture for this, and it slipped my mind until just a moment ago. But when they're sort of touring Coruscant and they're having their they're glow in the dark ice lollies, as it were, and looking at the highest point of Coruscant and all of that sort of thing. The street performer that's kind of doing magic tricks there is actually the cinematographer Dean Cundy, who actually lit that particular episode. Dean Cundy, obviously, famously having worked with John Carpenter, Robert Zemeckis, Steven Spielberg, and he did a similar thing in Back to the Future 3, where he was the photographer at the of Marty and Doc, by the clock, become the clock tower in Hill Valley and stuff. He apparently because obviously he was the director of photography of last week's episode, but he also had a cameo there, and I totally missed that one. Nice. But I think that's a really cool cameo. I love it.
It's brilliant. No, I didn't know that either. So thanks for bringing that up.
I think it's thanks to Heavy Spoilers channel for that one. I mean, they're a massive channel that's got a great big following. But I think it was them who pointed that out, and I was like, "Oh my lord, I completely missed that." But there you go.
I'll go back and have a look.
Yes, indeed. So no, that was really cool to check out, and I thought, well, I want to bring it up on this because if we do miss anything, particularly if it's something significant or cool like that was, I always want to flag that up. So yeah, but time to get into it, I guess. So Graham, you may fire when ready.
Chapter 20, The Foundling. We spend time this episode with the Mandalorian culvert on the unnamed planet. Foundling, the young Mandalorians fight and train amongst adult Mandalorians. This includes Grogu. Din Djarin uses some persuasive Mandalorian logic to line Grogu up for a training battle with a foundling Ragnar. After a shaky start, Grogu uses the Force and wins. Din Miyagi is very proud. But their celebrations are rudely interrupted by a flying Star Wars dragon raptor who snatches away the defeated Ragnar. No, not as a punishment for being a loser, but a natural threat and one that the Mandalorians have faced previously. Bo-Katan follows the dragon raptor to its lair and then returns to lead a ragtag bunch on a stealth, free solo, pun intended, esque rescue mission. Past experience tells the Mandalorians that they must be quiet as foundlings have been killed by the dragon raptor previously. Whilst they're away, the armourer makes Grogu a rondel, a new addition to his armour of Beskar. But the process induces flashbacks for Grogu during the night of his escape from the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and the slaughter of the Jedi by clone troopers following Order 66. As tense and exciting as the ensuing escape and chase scenes are, to us, the audience, they are deeply sad memories for Grogu. Back at the rescue mission, the Dragon Raptor's nest is found, but the rescue attempt must wait until first light. Bo-Katan learns more of Mandalorian creed with the privacy of eating, alone, where helmets can be removed. And so next day, the rescue mission, not quite a mission impossible, is a tense but thrilling high-octane chase by air. The Dragon Raptor is a wily creature. The chase turns into an aerial battle with the Mandalorians having to work as a team. Din does the honours of snatching Ragnar away from the Dragon Raptor before she is felled. Bo-Katan flies everyone back to the culvert to much cheering and a surprising humanitarian gesture of not just rescuing a foundling, but also in the rescue of 3 orphaned baby dragon raptors. The armourer makes a shoulder pad replacement of Beskar for Bo-Katan, notably with a mythosaur sigil. When Bo-Katan confesses she has actually seen the mythosaur, the armourer simply accepts. This is the way.
Nice. Again, a lot happening. Interestingly, one of the shorter episodes this week, whereas last week we had one of the longer episodes, but obviously not featuring much of Mando.
I've thought on that one in a bit.
Oh, okay. Good. Well,
yeah.
We will get to that, but before we do, it is time to thank the maker. Okay, so this is where we look at some of the behind the scenes, etc. So this week's episode, the writing credits go to showrunner Jon Favreau and executive producer Dave Filoni for this one. We've talked, extensively about these guys on previous episodes, so I won't repeat myself there. But the episode was directed by Carl Weathers. Again, we have spoken to him about him, I believe, on previous episodes. Of course, we've talked about his various acting credits, well known not only for The Mandalorian, but of course things like Rocky and Predator and loads of good stuff. But he did actually direct an episode of The Mandalorian back in season 2. He did episode 4, chapter 12, The Siege, which was a great episode. And again, I think he leads a very skilled hand to this. But looking at some of his other directing credits, he's not so well known for that, but they do span right the way back to the 1990s, where he directed an episode of Renegade. He also did several episodes between 93 and 97 of the show Silk Stalkings. He was the director on a TV series called Strong Medicine, 18 Wheels of Justice, For the People, Danny and the Deep Blue Sea, a few episodes of Hawaii Five-0, Law and Order, FBI, and Chicago Med, as well as doing The Mandalorian. So mainly TV work, not so much any feature work there, but he's it's good to see him that he's doing work both behind as well as in front of the camera. So great that they brought Carl Weathers back for that. The other person I wanted to give a mention, obviously we'll get into his character, etc., when we go into further episode parts of this and look at Easter eggs and stuff. But I wanted to give a shout out to Ahmed Best, who in this plays Caloran Beck. But is probably best known to the Star Wars franchise as playing the much maligned character Jar Jar Binks in the prequel trilogy. But has also, done plenty of acting over the years in various other shows, such as One and Done, Korea Suicide, Arthur's Edge, Fallout 76. Oh, that's actually a video game, sorry, as well as The Last of Us Part 2 video game as well. Star Wars Jedi Temple Challenge, which we will come back to later in this episode, and Sidetracked. So good to see that he had an acting part in this episode and wanted to give him a shout out. So well done, Ahmed Best. I feel that we'll be talking quite a bit about you in the remainder of this episode. So there you go, Graham. Any other thoughts on the production side? Because
no, it's just another brilliantly directed episode of Carl Weathers.
Yes.
I thought it was a tight 33 minutes or so that we had.
Yes.
But he moved the pace, not just in the action, which, to be fair, as the siege, I absolutely geeked out. There was geek goop everywhere. in that episode in season 2.
Yes.
And then seeing this again, just we will get into them, but even the quieter, more dramatic and plot as well. There was a genuine decent pace here. So Carl Weathers again shone brightly, I think, his work there. The music, as ever,
Always.
sound of music it is always brilliant. Understated, you think, until you revisit an episode. So yeah, again, as I've said previously, music there, but the production as a whole is excellent. That we will talk a bit more on some foibles,
Yes.
especially with CG. But
yes.
not
Good. I'm glad you said that, because I had when we get to that, absolutely. Obviously, with the music, as we credited last week, Joseph Shirley is actually responsible for the score and incidental music during the show. Obviously, as we know, Ludwig Göransson does the main theme. And interestingly, I did go and see Creed 3 this week on the big screen, and of course, on previous installments of that, Ludwig Göransson has been involved in the music, but Joseph Shirley actually did do the score to Creed 3. So it's quite good, that sort of master apprentice kind of thing going on. It's all connected. Look,
nice.
So excellent. Right. Well, now time to have a bit of fun and have a look at some Easter eggs and a drink of some Bantha milk. Blue. So, any ones that you want to kick off with here, Graham?
Right. Yeah. Easter eggs. I have a feeling that there's so many Easter eggs in this one that maybe some of the uber geeks and those who've got time to research have gone into it. But effectively, once you flash back into previous movies or TV of Star Wars, it's rich. So effectively, Grogu's flashbacks to Coruscant and Order 66, there starts the list.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had seen, even in previous Mandalorian episode of Grogu having a flashback of the clone troopers blowing open a door and literally shooting down some Jedi who were protecting Grogu. We just got a bit more of that this time. Then there was the escape as well through and around Coruscant. A nice little touch. We didn't really need it as such from last week, but we did get to see the peak of the mountain, the highest mountain in Coruscant, as Kelleran was blasting through with his Star Wars Wallace and Gromit motorbike and sidecar.
Yes.
Grogu in the sidecar, of course.
So he's the same peak, 30 years earlier in the timeline. But yeah, it was quite funny. It wasn't funny. It was production coincidence, I'm sure, that we saw it just last week. Yeah.
Indeed, yes. Well, no. So you've got the all the different types of clone troopers as well. I did notice that.
Yes.
The red clad one, the blue, as well as the black and white as well there. And then there's now, not being a details guy into the ships, but we do get the prequel trilogy ships as well. So I know that they've been more Naboo based,
yes,
rather than what we had, or Imperial based or Rebel based later on in the middle trilogy, our trilogy there. So we had all of them. But again, I don't know the numbers, specs there, but it was good to hear. And even when my daughter was listening in on this as well, she said, "Oh, isn't that a great noise? Isn't that a great sound? What will be the TIE fighter laser being shot? A sound of our childhood, and now that's being passed on to the next generation in Shea Williams."
There you go.
So again, I'm sure you could fill in a lot more details within just there, Keith. But I did want to point out one that there's a shot actually back in present time where the where Bo-Katan is chasing after the dragon raptor, whatever it's called, in on the planet, and they fly into a sunset. And
Yes.
my memory just went, "There's JJ, there's JJ Abrams' Force Awakens, where with the TIE fighters coming out of the sunset."
Yeah, which is actually a double Easter egg, because you're absolutely right. That was inspired by the shot that JJ used for The Force Awakens, which was inspired by Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, where the Huey
Yeah,
helicopters are approaching, against the sunset. So there you go. It's a reference, to classic movies, as well as the sequel trilogy. So yeah.
nice.
Which
So
is
other than that, that's all I can remember that I did spot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One other thing I did note when I'm looking at the cast list on IMDb here is Tamura Morrison is actually credited as being the voice of the clone troopers as well. Obviously, he did the voices of those for the prequel trilogy. And of course, he's been involved recently with the Book of Boba Fett, etc. But it's good that from a continuity point of view, that they used him for the voices there. But I mean, I think you hit most of them, to be honest, Graham. I'm not the uber geek that spots every single little thing, whether it's a reference to legends and the non-canon stuff and all of this. I know that the wrist dart launcher that Grogu uses, that has been, I think, used in the Clone Wars. We've seen those used in like the Clone Wars animated series and stuff. Obviously, we always knew it was part of Boba Fett's, armory and stuff on the Mandalorian armor and stuff. But I rather like this because back when I was a teenager, I used to play paintball, and I kind of like that the Mandalorians for their training have kind of an equivalent, a Star Wars equivalent of paintball. So with the paint splats and whatever, I thought that was quite.
Darts would hurt, wouldn't they? Paint hurts less.
Yes, exactly. Obviously, you've pointed out most of this, but when we see Grogu's backstory, we of course go back to Order 66, which we saw in Revenge of the Sith. And obviously, we've had bits of this flashback in previous episodes of The Mandalorian, but it's nice that they're sort of gradually filling in some of Grogu's backstory here. And we see that, there was always a lot of speculation as to which Jedi Knight or who exactly was going to rescue or did rescue Grogu back then. And this is quite a funny one because, as I've mentioned, Ahmed Best gets to have a role in this. But as we've sort of mentioned before, Filoni and Favreau sort of have a habit of cherry picking from other media, if you like, in Star Wars, whether it's canon or not, or whether it's just canon adjacent and whatever. And apparently, I didn't know this, but there is Ahmed Best, this Kelleran Beck character, is a role that he has played in what was kind of like a Nickelodeon type kids quiz show that was on YouTube called Star Wars: The Jedi Temple Challenge. And I only know that because I was obviously trying to find out more acting credits for him when I was doing the Thank the Maker section. So this character was actually a character from that TV show. And he was the host basically of this Jedi Challenge game show. And obviously now they brought him into canon, which is great. And as I mentioned, obviously previously his involvement has been for both doing the motion capture and the voicing of Jar Jar Binks. Something that the actor over the years has received a lot of hate for, which I always think, kind of separate the art from the artist. It wasn't his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. The fact that Jar Jar Binks was maligned by many, is not down to the actor himself. But I think it's great that he's gone from playing kind of a slapstick CG character to playing like a really cool Jedi Knight. So he's kind of got he's got the laugh on everyone now, playing this role. So that was obviously an Easter egg to another part of Star Wars lore, if you like. As you absolutely rightly pointed out, you get the Naboo starship that we saw in the prequels. Now, I'm not a starships expert like Sam. I'm sure there's a specific name and model number for this ship. I know it's similar to the one that was used in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, the one that Padme and Anakin used. So, yeah, they're using the same style starships there. And the other one I thought was kind of an Easter egg. I put up a little picture there of Liam Neeson is Qui-Gon Jinn saying there's always a bigger fish, because I just thought the bit towards the end when the raptor type creature flew over the lake, and then the big creature that we saw from earlier in the season leaps up and grabs him. I thought, oh yeah, that's one of those there's always a bigger fish type Star Wars in jokes, maybe. I don't know, but I didn't specifically spot anything else. Yes, there was the peak of Coruscant as we'd seen in the last episode, and no doubt they used that because obviously they had that asset made for that previous episode, and it seemed kind of silly to waste it, right? So they put that in this, but I thought there was some interesting stuff in there.
I'm sure there's uber geeks out there who will literally list out everything, and continuity wise doesn't seem to be out, which is obviously something that can be a bugbear of yours. But no, yeah, that one short scene did offer up much for the fans in this one.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I like the fact that that they, when they need, my view is when they need another character, okay, what's wrong with? I don't see anything wrong with cherry picking established characters from other media, other mediums within the Star Wars universe, because they've already got a name and an image and a backstory and all of that sort of thing. So if it works, why not? Why not do it if it works? So yeah, good stuff. All right. Time to look at a little bit of speculation before we get into it. So never tell me the odds. All right. So any sort of major things for you, Graham?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back before I go forward on this one.
Okay.
It's the hint earlier. So we go back to the last episode, and we had the book ends of the Mandalorian story around for me, it was unrelated to what we're seeing now, and probably what we will see now in the future as well. So I'm wondering actually that this episode, so this fourth episode, chapter 20, that one with slight tweaks, only tweaks in rewrites, would have fitted snugly into last week. So we could have actually had the two bookends then rolling into this particular story. So that would have been episode 3, which would have allowed 5 episodes to continue the Mandalorian story, whereas we've only got 5 now if we do go by tradition, which is 8 episodes for the remainder of the season, which then, as speculation goes, means that they will either have to pack a lot of story into 4 episodes, and we haven't seen too much story, even though I am enjoying this more than most, I think, this season. Or they're going to have to make it a bit more thinner, a bit less deep this season. So with 4 episodes to go, I think they really lost some momentum last week, and obviously lost time in telling the Mandalorian, Grogu, and Bo-Katan's story. So that's Din Djarin Mandalorian, that is. So obviously this one fits nicely in just having a platform there. So the next part, which we've discussed previously, there's less time for them to get into it and really get into the depth that we've had with the previous 2 seasons. So I see that, if that is the case, I see that as a big shame. And I mentioned last week as well that, whilst as good as the story was and it was well done last week, I just didn't think it fitted here. And obviously now we may probably say we've seen this week, and then onwards we'll see the impact of that. We'll see that actually that one was just a bit of a waste of space for the Mandalorian, not for the Star Wars universe, but for the Mandalorian. So there's that. I still see that Bo-Katan will try and recruit these guys, go out there and recruit more Mandalorians and actually go back to Mandalore, and will want to be excuse the word, supreme leader. So she will want to be the Princess of Mandalore again. I think that's going to happen.
Right.
I think there's going to be a bit of a clash still with the Armorer, even though Bo-Katan is becoming more of a convert to the Creed. I think I still stand by my predictions there. Grogu himself and his story, whether he would be a Mandalorian but a bit more dark, could go there, but it seems as if he is being indoctrinated more into the Creed, and he would become Jedi, Mandalorian, whatever. I can't remember what the phrase you used last week. It was
Grogu-Lorian.
Grogu-Lorian, that's it. Yeah.
Yes,
so I think that's it could go there, but the flashbacks again, I'm not sure if they're more and him being accepted as cathartic, or a switch is going to flick, and the darker side of Grogu will need to be presented. That was my initial prediction back. I think it was episode 1. So he may be there. And Din Djarin himself, there's not much happening with him. Don't know where he's going to go. I thought he maybe have split allegiances if and when Bo-Katan and the Armorer do clash.
Yes.
Where do his loyalties then lie? So that's still an interesting one that could happen. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this mini speech, that they've got less time to really do the quality of it.
No, absolutely. And I totally agree with what you're saying. Like we talked about at the beginning of this season, where we weren't sure whether Bo-Katan was going to turn out to be an ally or an antagonist for this season. And with each episode that goes on, it seems more and more that she's becoming kind of an ally, really, doesn't it? But yeah, it is kind of interesting I think the fact I was surprised when she shared, we'll get into this when we get into our views on the episode, but I was surprised that she shared the knowledge she did with the Armorer. But yeah, before we get into that, in terms of speculation, so I haven't done a very good job with the slides this week. So I've got a picture there of Jar Jar Binks, right? And I meant that was actually supposed to be in the speculation part, because I'm wondering, obviously even though we know now that Jedi Knight Kelleran Beck was the one who actually rescued Grogu, there was a whole scheme behind that, because they remember those guards from those Naboo guards asked if if there are any other Jedi coming. And obviously, we've already mentioned that's a Naboo style cruiser that they're put onto and escape. But the question is, kind of who sent the cruiser? Who was it? It obviously wasn't Padme, because at that point in the timeline, as this is going on, she's at home wondering where Anakin is, while Anakin is out kind of slaughtering younglings, right? So he's already become Darth Vader by name, at least at this point, right? So the question, we know Bail Organa was kind of busy going back to the temple and stuff at this point as well in the films. So yeah, the question is, who did send that? And I'm wondering whether we know that Jar Jar Binks was a senator at this point, right? By episode 3. Do you think Jar Jar Binks could have sent them? And do you think we'll get one of these bizarre things where Ahmed Best is actually going to be playing 2 roles in one scene?
I hope not.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm one of the non-fans of Jar Jar Binks. Although, just quickly on that, before we move on this with Keith, I do remember that there is it may still be on YouTube. There's a video made by one Uber fan, which shows Jar Jar Binks as actually a secret master Jedi. So all his clumsiness, actually, the upshot of those, or the what happens afterwards, and what he does actually either saves somebody, kills an enemy, or drives the story more towards the goodies. And it's so well cut and so well presented that actually is like, holy moly, Jar Jar Binks actually is more of a secret agent type guy, and beyond Inspector Clouseau, where it's that. So there's a potential there, but no, let's let the Mandalorian continue without.
No, absolutely. I mean, I have to say that certainly with the Phantom Menace, I was not a Jar Jar Binks fan in any way, shape, or form. I didn't like the slapstickness. I found the character irritating. I preferred it in the second and third movie, where he was more of a a supporting side character and stuff. And I know that George Lucas, when he created the character, had big sort of ambitions, thinking it would be a super popular character and all of this sort of thing. But like I said, I don't blame Ahmed Best for that, at all. It just wasn't a very well conceived character. And yes, it was the first full CGI character in cinema history, I believe. So it was obviously important. It's got its place in cinema and visual effects history and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, the whole kind of slapstick, buffoonish behavior, and it was actually quite irritating, wasn't it? It was supposed to be like the comic relief stuff, but I know it upset a lot of people, and
but the kids loved him.
Well, yeah, exactly. And let's be honest, us original trilogy fans sometimes have a hard job sort of accepting that. But it's space wizard fantasy for kids, right? It's that that 7 to 12-year-old thing that's what we were with the original trilogy, right? So
absolutely.
But
absolutely, yeah. And even though we keep on referencing back to that trilogy, I can leave it behind and still focus on what we get with the original trilogy. Now, we do stretch out to Rogue One. We do stretch out now to The Mandalorian as well. But I, for one, get to take that, not just because I'm a fan of that, because of the quality as well. We see it with Andor, even. We can start to stretch it out there. But we're lucky, even though we had to suffer through the first the second trilogy, the prequel trilogy, in that we can leave them behind. There's enough Star Wars content, there's enough Star Wars out there for us to still return to and love, and there is quality, and no one's going to be a fan of it all, right? Because they are reaching different audiences after all.
Yeah, I mean, how lucky are we now that there's so much media and content here that we can actually pick and choose which bits we want. I think I saw something the other day that was quite staggering, that the original trilogy, i.e., the ones from the 70s stroke 80s that we grew up with, that original trilogy now only equates to 6% of the overall Star Wars content, film and TV content that's out there.
Wow. So, and 96% of our lives at some point.
Yeah.
But no, listen, John Lennon said it, right? With the Beatles music, people were critics and fans of their earlier stuff in the mid 60s were saying, "Oh, we just don't like what you're doing. You've got to go back to that." I said, "Listen, the old stuff hasn't gone away. You can still listen to that. It's still there for you. We're moving on. We're doing our own thing, but you can still listen and do be a fan of our earlier stuff." And that's what we're finding here. We're in a lucky position that we have so much of Star Wars out there, and many other universes, Star Trek included.
Yeah,
we can pick and choose and buy the T-shirts and cosplay and do whatever else that we do for fun.
I was going to say, I don't want to go off on a big side tangent on another topic here, but I have to say that in recent years, I've kind of changed my opinion a little bit on whether or not you need to be a completist, for things like Star Wars and Star Trek and whatever. And, I'm always about the sort of continuity and the timeline and, all of this sort of good stuff and what is and isn't canon. But yeah, you can have a head canon, and you don't need to be a completist anymore to enjoy this stuff. I think there's enough of it out there, and that is one could say it's diluted and taken something away from how special maybe something used to be. But at the same time, when there's so much out there, you can literally pick and choose, even like the creators are doing. Like I've said, they are cherry picking from what is Legends nowadays, and bringing it into the main canon or the main storytelling. And on that subject, actually, that is quite a good segue to the other thing that I brought up last week about whether or not we were going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn. Yeah, and I mentioned that Lars Mikkelsen has been voicing him in the Rebels animated series, and apparently I saw, again, I don't know how much stuff we read nowadays is true or not, but apparently some statement was made that he would not be, even though he voiced the character in Rebels, he will not be actually playing the character in live action. Whether or not that's admitting that the character will be coming in live action, I don't know, because it was very, very vague the way they put it. But I mean, okay, we've got Katie Sackhoff, who did the voice for Bo-Katan, now, playing the live action Bo-Katan. They've even sort of, changed her hairstyle to sort of match the animated character, etc. But I mean, it's not the first time that somebody voicing the animated character hasn't played a live action one. We've got Ashley Eckstein who did Ahsoka. Obviously, Rosario Dawson is playing her live action. Jason Isaacs voiced the Grand Inquisitor, and obviously Rupert Friend played him in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So all bets are open with that sort of thing as to who is going to play it. But I do still feel that character eventually will come in live action. Whether or not it's going to be in the Mandalorian, or whether it'll be in like the Ahsoka series, who knows? But I think it's quite inevitable that character, which is one that they cherry picked from the Legends continuity, is gonna at some point, I think, we'll see in a live action series. But that's just
well. Before then, I'll have to go and read the trilogy. Only introduced to me last week by you, so it's on the list for me to get through.
It is worth your time, but there you go. But anyway, time to really get into this and take it from a certain point of view. All right, so this episode, I know you had a few issues, Graham, with the I say a few issues. You didn't like it that it took it away from the main sort of Mandalorian, Bo-Katan, Grogu storyline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last week.
Yeah. It will be a too much of a stuck record there, I hope. But yeah, there's a lot of good here. There's some unfortunately dodgy CGI there. So I'd rather start off with the negative and move into the positive and end on the positive as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just quickly, yeah. So even from the culvert and the Mandalorian fighting at the beginning where they're all in training, I just saw that there was almost like an animated type, really stiff animation there, CGI, which took me out a bit. And some of the ironically Coruscant chase scene, even though it's at night, looked a bit, I don't know, maybe green screened or just look because I thought back at this that we're in this day and age now where we're looking more critically, and we've got a keener eye for CG and CG being as realistic as possible. So I was like, actually, am I being just a bit too harsh? Because 10 years ago, 20 years, 40 years ago, we accepted what we saw. We look back at things like at the original Star Wars, Back to the Future, and you look at it now, and it does look a bit clunky at times. So I thought to myself, ease off on them a bit. But then I thought, hang on a moment, this is bloody Disney here. They've got more money than God. So why aren't they putting decent money into making what we're seeing of a high quality? So that was a negative there for me. But the plotting here, it was bringing it back to Mandalorian and really getting into the lore of Mandalore, which definitely is something I enjoy. But as far as the storytelling as well, it did tick off some boxes. So what I mean by that is it was a nice kind of pause in the storytelling of everyone. But again, that one it really could have fitted into last week and would now be driving the story forward on that. So those two nitpicks really on the CG first and last week. But I'll stop talking about last week.
Okay, I mean on the sort of CG side, there was one shot in particular of Grogu when he looks up at Din. They did look a bit clunky, and I thought, that's not up to its sort of usual standard there. I suspect that it was probably less to do with money and more to do with time. In terms of the turnaround on some of these things. But yes, there were a couple. I mean, generally, these shows are hard to fault from a production in terms of they look great point of view. Most of the visual effects, most of the special live action effects, like the animatronics and stuff, and the costuming and all of that sort of stuff is generally pretty spot on.
Yeah, let me just on a positive note there, Keith, that the Dragon Raptor chase and fight in the air was freaking amazing. It was just absolutely top draw.
Yeah,
uber exciting.
Iron Man level stuff there, wasn't it? So,
yeah, it was, but it was, and it genuinely felt real. We all know that it's all make-uperized, is
Yeah.
this, but it really was thrilling because of that. So there was definitely class here.
Yeah, no, and I mean props to Carl Weathers if he was, from a director's point of view, sort of overseeing how that sort of stuff would work, visually, storytelling wise, and editorially, and all of that sort of thing. Because yes, that was all put together extremely well. I think the visual, or it's not even a visual effects, but the logic thing that kind of bought me out of it and got my goat and kind of annoyed me slightly was when I think they're calling it the raptor beast or whatever, but the main, beast in this episode that they go on the hunt over, when he regurgitates the youngling, what was it, Ragnar, is that the name of the youngling? I think so.
His name, yeah.
When he regurgitates him, like, the kid is absolutely fine and bone dry. And and I'm like, hold on, am I supposed to believe that this kid has been in its gullet for a certain amount of time, to be spewed up there, but not covered in any gunk or moisture, or, not to be sort of half unconscious or anything? And I don't know, that kind of was the, what we're always talking about, logic within the universe that it's in. So in other words, within a universe where we've got flying dragons and the Force and people with jetpacks and armor and all of this sort of stuff. But I don't know, that just really irritated me. I was like, this looks ridiculous and this is silly now. So I kind of got annoyed by that, and I got annoyed by the Paz Vizsla, when he sort of says, oh, the Foundling is his son, right? And to me, when he looked through his thermal scanner and saw, 3 heat signatures, or sorry, saw a heat signature in the nest, and instantly assumed that was Ragnar and went to run for it, I thought, well, that's either going to be eggs or baby monsters, So again, I thought that was a little bit silly. I thought, come on, you've got this far by being all sort of stealth and clever, and you blow it at that point. But I'm really nitpicking here. I understand that. I'm totally nitpicking, but those were the things where I rolled my eyes slightly while I was watching it. I thought, oh, this is a bit silly now.
Understood. No, because Star Wars has never been afraid of goop, and even from first Star Wars, A New Hope, they're in the trash compactor on the Death Star, and it's messy. They come out a bit. They Luke at least comes out a bit damp.
Yeah. And we saw how Boba Fett came out of the Salak, for example, and I just can't believe this kid wasn't covered in something like that. That kind of irritated me. I'm not going to lie, which is
what we should do is write a strongly worded letter to the Star Wars Zoological Society, just to say that that there would be some moisture, there would be some mucus in the gullet of a dragon raptor.
Yeah, of a completely fictitious creature that a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Yeah, no, of course. On the plus side, though, I will say about one thing I really liked about the sort of internal logic of the Star Wars universe was I really loved the fact that they emphasized in this that the jetpacks have a limited range. And again, I love that because the idea that they could fly around on these things indefinitely is obviously stupid, ludicrous, doesn't make any sense. But that's what we've kind of seen them doing so far. So the fact that when they give chase to the raptor, they get to a point where they don't have the thrust or the energy to keep pursuing it. Brilliant plot point. So I love that. I love stuff like that because I'm like, yeah, that completely works and makes sense.
It's a hurdle up for the goodies going after a baddie, and it's a type of conflict which
Yeah.
obviously is drama.
Yeah.
So they have to rethink and find another way. Also with the fact that they have to be quiet, they can't go up there because there is history of foundlings
Yes.
being killed, which is a tragic backstory too. That is mentioned there too. And that is that ups the danger, ups the ante for us as an audience to see that.
No, really good. I'm also like the fact that obviously I always like to get to see Katie Sackhoff, but I like the fact that they've kind of dealt in this episode as well with that big fan question that keeps coming up now about how, well, if the Mandalorians have got to keep their helmets on all the time, how do they eat and how do they get on with this and get on with that? And we know in season 1, actually, Din Djarin talks about this in the episode, the A-Team episode, as I always call it, where he's helping the villagers against the ATST thing.
Yes. So,
which is
the
essentially
samurai one.
which, I was going to say, essentially is the Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai, all that sort of stuff. But in that, I believe he does tell one of the villagers that to eat, he has to have privacy and all of this sort of thing. So we know that anyway. But a lot of people were sort of bringing that up, and obviously you've got these actors like Katie Sackhoff, who's certainly within science fiction, she's a pretty big name, having made most of her career off of that for the last, 20 years or so. And, the fact that we get to see her face and they take the helmet off, that's another good bit of explanation and all this. But I have to say, in this episode, for me, I actually found the B plot a lot more enjoyable. I enjoyed seeing more of Grogu's backstory and going back to the events of Order 66 and seeing what happened there. And obviously, in just more of the wonderful puppet, whatever that they're using for Grogu, that's obviously adorable in every scene. But no, I kind of like that. I'm still, if I'm honest, I mean, it's one thing to think of one of these little creatures being a Jedi Knight and jumping around with lightsabers and all of this, which of course we've seen with Yoda, and we've seen Grogu do it in those offshoot episodes of Book of Boba Fett, and which obviously comes back to play in this, which again for me is another reason why that whole thing is stupid, having those 2 episodes. I'm not going to let that one go. Having those 2 episodes in Book of Boba Fett, stupid, really bad decision. But anyway, I stand by that. But we have that. But that's one thing. But I don't know. Grogu in a Mandalorian suit of armor, to me, seems a bit ridiculous, and I don't know.
Well, if he turns out to be, with his language, to be like Yoda, we would have this is the
way. We're
not going to get this, so that we're going to have a change to that. And now that we have a new phrase together, I'll read this one, Owen. One does not speak unless one knows, was the logic that got Din to have Grogu fight. But how is that going to work then in a Yoda aspect? That's going to be speak not one unless one knows does. That's
the way this is, yes. I love it. This is brilliant, Graham. I hadn't thought of this, but yes.
So we could have that. His armor, his Mandalorian armor is building. It goes back to what the armorer was saying during this episode about how how the armor is forged for a Mandalorian, how their life is forged too, which is some really cool philosophy there. One that I can relate to. Not that I've got a suit of armor, but I'm going to start now. That was the lovely moments there. Definitely some real. Again, Carl Weathers directed really well. There's a pace there, but he didn't rush it.
Yeah, and at least the Mandalorians can't get accused of being any sort of ists or phobes about anything, because if they can literally take anyone into the order, whether they are, the size of Grogu, or indeed one of these baby raptor things, which was that the point of getting them at the end, or is it so they can tame them and ride them?
I was going with that one because it's
Yeah.
very much a theme. You had them with the blurgs, Mandalorians used to ride blurgs, Mandalorians used to ride
the
mythosaurs.
mythosaur. Yeah.
Boba Fett rides the
Rancors.
Rancor. So I think it's more of a Mandalorian taming creatures is part of the lore more than anything else.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But it's I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, we know Grogu's already got his chainmail vest that Din Djarin sent him. Which was made out of Beskar, right?
We see a lot more of this. I noticed it more this week, even before he had the rondelle made for him as well. So I could see it above his collar here, and I hadn't quite noticed that before. Maybe it was just me not being attentive enough.
Again, though, this whole thing with Beskar, right? So Beskar can deflect a lightsaber, which is supposed to be a weapon that can cut through anything apart from another lightsaber. Yeah. But Beskar can deflect it, right? But they forge Beskar as if they're forging, steel or another metal. Yeah. And also, we've also got that thing where Boba Fett had the dent in his helmet. So all of that.
It's not a Beskar helmet, though. I thought only Din has a Beskar helmet.
Oh, is it? Oh, maybe.
That's my
I don't know.
on it.
I've kind of the lore behind all the Mandalorian stuff. It's quite convoluted now, so I've got a bit confused by it. But is it not? Okay.
So yeah, I was looking at the fact that it's forged. It's not cut through. That the armorer usually just melts it down, so it only ever becomes liquid there. So you're never cutting through that. Beskar is still being forged, but I don't know what that continues. Their gas bill must be enormous. She's got the ring of the intense heat that the armorer has for her forge is every scene you go in. I know that could be how she heats her home, which is the cave, right, or give some ambient light for her. It's quite huiga, isn't it? It's quite a soft light, but effectively, their gas bills. Oh, I wouldn't like to be there when I don't know what would I don't even know what the name of the planet is, but it can't be kind of like it can't be like British gas or Southern gas, can it? Maybe some natural gases in the planet, and that's why they're there. So they're actually tapping into, but she's using a lot. But anyway, we're steering away from the plot here. We should really come back to Beskar.
Yes, indeed. And again, I think we might be reading too much into this, right?
I think so. Yes, yeah. I think I need to take my tablets now and have a lie down.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I mean, I thought this episode was all right.
It didn't do too much for driving the story forward, but I just think this one is placed as we often find in series. You need a place. You need one that just settles everyone. You get more into the characters, or maybe even backstory, and I'm good with that because then the pressure, though, as I mentioned earlier, is that you've got 4 episodes to go. The next episode should really drive the story forward, and that's where we're probably going to be uber critical, aren't we? Because we're expecting so much now.
Yeah. How much? I'm just trying to remember how many are
so
in
this was chapter.
There's 8 in this, so we're literally halfway, right?
Exactly that.
8 in this season. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's got quite a bit to do. It depends how long. Also, it depends how long the future episodes are going to be, because obviously this one was pretty short. Last week's was a longer one, so it's not like they're made to a strict episode minute count anymore. Now they're on streaming, so don't know, but it was I think Carl Weathers did a good job with the the direction of it, because obviously this one was written by the two showrunners. It's good that we got a bit more with the mythology, both on the Mandalorian side, but also with Grogu's backstory. I thought that was good. I like that there's a lot of people that I think are somewhat disappointed that the person that rescued Grogu wasn't a more recognizable character. But I personally am quite happy that it's still someone that's already an established Star Wars character that they've taken. But in this massive universe with lots of Jedi Knights, it would have been a bit disappointing if it had been one of the characters we already know. So I think
I'm
right choice.
I have no qualms there, Keith.
Yeah.
We've got, again, it's okay to bring in certain characters here and there because if it drives the story, if it makes sense. And the speculation I've literally just thought of is, what if Keller and Beck will be a character that we will see more of, maybe now, and blending into the Ahsoka story potentially, because she was involved in and around Order 66, being Ahsoka, that is, right? So, he may now become a staple of these stories in flashback, because Grogu's story, we still have the gap between he is now rescued, what happens next for him to be found, on the planet that we first see the Mandalorians, or Din Djarin, with IG-11 going to hunt him out, right? So
I have to say, I'm really glad they seem to have dropped that plot point. The one in the first episode where it was about trying to sort of resurrect IG-11, and I was like, this doesn't make much sense and why and all this. But they do seem to have totally dropped that, don't they? I mean, we didn't even see R5 in this episode.
No, we did not. No, so it could be that they needed a plot device to drive things forward. And we're okay there now. We don't have to explain too much about things. It's not so contained anymore, is it? It's not such a contained story. It's blending into other stories and other characters too. So that allows for dipping in and out of character plots.
I'm not too sure. Again, the question is, just like last week, the question is, are we gonna go back to Coruscant and those characters and what was going on with those characters? Begs the same question with this: is, are we going to flash back more to Grogu and the events post Order 66 and the Jedi? Who knows? Who knows?
It easily happen now that they've opened it up. They've really cracked it open now, haven't they? So that they've got more of a playing field, or a field to play in.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to add, Graham? I mean, we've been going a lot longer than an episode of The Mandalorian currently.
We've doubled the this week's episode in chat, but no, there was a lot of good. Again, I think also because of my own disappointment from last week coming into this one, it leveled me off, and it was a lot more positives. There's a lot there, and a bit more humor to some, again, the amazing aerial battle and chase. I can really go back there with the Mandalorians and the Raptor dragon monster. So that was uber cool as well. So I was really happy that I went back to it a second time earlier.
Yes. Cool. All right. Well, it's time to use the comlink. Okay. So thank you if you've made it this far through this episode. I really do appreciate it. As I said, any likes, reviews, comments, all very, very welcome. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow Home Media Minefield, which is this channel, or LSWOT Cast, which is for Let's See What's Out There Cast. We also have an email address, lswotcast@gmail.com, or indeed you can put comments down below on this video and I'll respond to that. Also want to thank Neil Myers for our theme music. His work can be found at neilmyersmusic.com. And please check out some of my other work on my other YouTube channel, British Isles, which is EYLES, as in my last name. There's some short films I made there. And likewise, we have a sister show going on with this where we are looking at season 3 of Star Trek Picard. So many Star Wars fans are also Star Trek fans. So if you are and you want to look at what we have to say about that, we have a very similar format to this show. Please check us out there. Also, you can find on this channel, there are some related videos to this. I can put links to in the show notes or at the end of this video. We look at the original trilogy on home media. So check that out. And we also look at the Star Wars radio dramas. So please check those out. But other than that, I just want to, well, thank you, Graham, for joining me on another adventure. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
I love your input as always. And thank you for watching. And we will see you next time on
Let's See What's Out There.
Bye for now.